According to the United Nations, as of 2013, 6 billion of the world's 7 billion people have access to cell phones. Now, that's more than the number of people who have access to toilets around the world. Mobile phones have not only revolutionized the way we communicate, in many classrooms around the globe, mobile technologies are increasing the power of learning. Scott Himelstein and Steve Vosloo know firsthand how these technologies are impacting education and improving learning opportunities. Scott is the director of the University of San Diego's Center for Education Policy and Law and Mobile Technology Learning Center. Steve is an expert in mobile learning with the specialization in information and communication technologies in developing countries. Now, in 2009, he launched the M4Lit, or Mobiles for Literacy project. It demonstrates the potential of mobile publishing to support teen reading and writing in South Africa and Kenya. Steve currently serves as head of mobile at Pearson, South Africa, where he's responsible for setting the company's mobile learning strategy and delivering key projects. Scott Himelstein is here with us in the studio, and joining us from Cape Town via satellite is Steve Vosloo. Welcome to you both. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
Thanks very much.
Now, Steve, let me begin with you. The number I just shared, 6 billion people worldwide have access to cell phones. That is a staggering figure. You have been quoted as saying, I'm going to read this, mobile learning is no longer an innovation within institutional learning, but a reflection of the world in which institutional learning takes place. What do you mean by that?
Well, absolutely. The way that mobile technologies have been taken up is really staggering, as you said. It's unprecedented that the world is so connected and can so easily communicate and socialize and do business and learn. And what's interesting with mobile learning is that because mobile technologies were taken up really by people outside of the four walls of the classroom, now for the first time, the education system, which is usually quite resistant to change and quite slow to change, is catching up and realizing the potential of having learners and students and teachers connected and having access to information, and is almost trying to retrofit how we teach and how we learn in this new and connected world.
That's so interesting, Scott, isn't it? The idea that we're trying to retrofit and try to piece together, and schools are a little bit behind from what the rest of the world is doing with technology.
Exactly. So we are working, our Mobile Technology Center are working with many districts here in Southern California and across the nation. And probably the most interesting thing we've found is that our students are entering the schoolhouse doors knowing how to learn through mobile technology, whether it's through video games, their mom or dad's phone, some kind of device. They expect to learn this way. And it's our school systems that are now trying to catch up, because many of those school systems contain teachers that are still there from when you and I went to school.
Right. We didn't have computers back then.
And some of them adapt to technology very well, some a little bit, and some don't want anything to do with it. Right. So it's a Herculean effort to try to get these systems to catch up.
That's so interesting, to try to bridge that huge gap. You don't really think about it until you see a system that's so antiquated as the school system versus the outside world. Steve, you're obviously working in South Africa and Kenya, as I mentioned in the intro. What are you seeing in those communities when it comes to mobile learning? Because here's a system where really they're sort of jumping over the gap, aren't they, in many ways?
In many ways they are, and I think that what everybody is beginning to see is the massive potential for technology to support education. So in many countries around the world, and especially in developing countries, we know that education systems are under immense pressure. There aren't enough teachers, there often aren't access to textbooks. There are learners in large classes, 70 or 80 students in a class. And so how can we strengthen the education system to help it develop and help it to serve and to operate most efficiently in those very constrained environments? Right. So we're seeing it across the board, across assessment, across providing access to information and to content, and also really connecting people who otherwise have not been connected. So whether it's teachers who are in rural schools, who for the first time instead of being isolated, can now talk to other teachers, even via Facebook or via WhatsApp, and share resources and support each other. So we're seeing it across, we're seeing the impact of mobile technologies across a wide range of points within the education system.
Steve, what about something even more basic than that in terms of just being able to reach kids in areas where normally they might not even be able to get to school because of geographic challenges?
Well, absolutely. You know, obviously mobile technology, as you said earlier, especially in Africa, has totally leapfrogged traditional technologies of landlines. Right. So, for example, in Nigeria, 27% of the population now owns a smartphone. And there are 15 million monthly active users on Facebook. In Nigeria, 1% of households have a landline telephone. So mobile technology has kind of opened up new connection opportunities that weren't possible before. And so by being able to reach people in a new way, you can deliver content and you can also interact with them.
Right, right.
I must just say, though, that it's not all... It doesn't mean that there's a level playing field now. There are still a lot of people that are disconnected. And much of the technology uptake has been in urban centers. Right. So a lot of work still needs to take place to get rural communities connected and to get good, sustainable, scalable and robust, internet connectivity to them.
Scott, it's a very different story, obviously, here in the U.S. I mean, everyone's connected. Every kid seems to have a mobile phone or some sort of computer device, right? So what are the challenges for you in terms of trying to push the mobile learning? We talked earlier about the fact that schools need to catch up. But I gotta be honest. When I hear about stuff like this, I'm like, it's a great idea, but could this be detrimental because kids are already so addicted to their gadgets they might not use it for that purpose of education, but rather just having fun?
Well, look, some of the time they aren't going to be using it for an educational purpose, and that's a good thing, right? I mean, there's a lot of fun with devices. We want kids to explore, create things, so that's not all bad. I'd say some of the challenges are, while districts are in the process of catching up, building their infrastructure, in a recent survey, about 80% of the superintendents across the country were very concerned about equity of access to the internet at home, away from school. So maybe not everybody has the type of broadband access that we would like. Some parents, due to economic reasons, worry about the cost of data plans.
Sure.
So there's some challenges there. How are we going to make up for that gap out of school,
That's
right?
true, because I was going to ask you about the issues of infrastructure, right? About broadband, about data plans, about costs. I mean, we still have those issues here in the United States, too. Sometimes the system doesn't work. We make fun of it. Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? Yeah, so with those types of issues, you've got to address that.
Right, absolutely. And look at, our school systems across the country. We have many classrooms that are 40 and 50 years old that actually can't carry the kind of pipes that you need to get the broadband access. So this is about financing school construction, building classrooms that can use mobile technology efficiently, and then asking ourselves the question, if we expect this of our children, do we have a duty to provide that access 24/7 outside the classroom as well? These are tough political and economic questions.
I was just going to say, that takes money.
It does.
That takes resources. So where do you get that? And that also then takes agreement on the part of local, state, federal government.
Absolutely. And that's where, these policy discussions come in. We as a nation need to decide if that's important, and if it is important, to what extent can we afford that?
That's right. That's right. Steve, let me ask you the same question. When it comes to fundamentals, we are talking about infrastructure issues too. I'm sure in Africa, that's probably even a bigger issue in many ways.
It definitely is, yes. And there are innovative ways to get around that. There's a great project in South Africa where we've implemented the project has implemented with 26 schools in a deep rural area a tablet rollout. those schools don't even have electricity, some of them. They certainly don't have internet connectivity. But they've put down local servers with local content and created local networks so that those schools can talk to each other and at least begin to create content and access that local content that's been produced there. We're also doing, Pearson is doing a project with one of the departments of education at also very rural schools. But there we are working with an infrastructure partner to get connectivity to those schools for that learning management system and those tablets. So I think it's about partnerships. And as Scott said, it's really about policy.
Right, right. Steve, can you give me a specific example of maybe a student or a school that has been positively impacted by the use of mobile learning technology?
Sure. I'll give you a personal example. The project that you mentioned earlier, where the mobiles for literacy, we really wanted to publish short stories and poems and even classic literature like Macbeth and make those available on mobile phones, knowing that books are very rare and very expensive, printed books in many countries, including South Africa. And I received an email from a teacher to say, thank goodness that you put Macbeth on these phones, because our kids are studying Macbeth this year, and they don't have the textbooks. They don't have enough to go around, and so they could access those books in digital format. Now that was a good few years ago. Now we're working closely with the government. Obviously, Pearson has a strong publisher history, and so we're working with the government to get tablets out there, to get e-books, onto tablets, and to try and kind of complement the print and digital. And I think, I don't think we always need to have an either-or scenario. Sometimes print and paper is great, sometimes digital and mobiles is great. And we can kind of leverage the best of both worlds in different scenarios.
Totally agree with you, Steve. Well, Scott, I know here one of your programs is using Minecraft, the video game, to teach students about coding.
Yes.
And again, I have to be that cynic. It's like, wait a minute, you're talking about video games with kids. Are they going to really focus on learning something, especially something as advanced as coding? But how is that working out?
So it's great. This is a kind of a medium-sized district in San Diego County, and the district really has set up one particular campus called a coding campus. The kids come in during school, before school, after school, and through the use of Minecraft are learning to code computer language.
Wow.
They're learning about spatial relationships on the computer. So it's a way to attract these kids to learn coding, math, science, all of the things that we want to teach. The only difference here is we're delivering content through a mobile device.
Right.
Where, as we said, sometimes, yes, print is good, but as we move further down this road, kids are devouring content through a device. We have to realize that.
That's so commonplace. I mean, that is what feels natural to them, which is pretty incredible.
Right.
Final question to you both, and we'll start with you, Scott.
Okay.
Well, how do you see mobile technology developing in the next 10 years? I mean, if you look down the road 10 years ahead, what do you think we're going to see?
Well, I think we're already seeing it. So across this country, school districts are passing policies that says we are no longer buying textbooks. All of our content is going to be delivered to our students through their devices. Right? We're going to continue on that road. I think teachers are going to get much, much better at teaching that way. So whereas before a teacher stood before a class, 25 students in rows.
With a chalkboard.
With a chalkboard. That's changing. They're putting students in groups. They're moving around. They're letting kids work as teams on projects. The kids use all sorts of sources for their information, not a textbook, but can go anywhere, anytime, any place.
It's amazing, isn't it, how far we've come in just like a couple of decades. And Steve, I'm going to ask you the same thing. When you look down the road 10 years ahead, what are you going to see, especially where you are in Africa?
Well, I hope that we go the same route as Scott just described. And I would really like to see mobile learning becoming much more personalized and learning systems becoming much more adaptive. And I think that Mobile is so personal in so many ways. It's so intimate because you take it around with you, not just at school, but at home, that if you could get a truly personalized learning systems and adaptive systems 10 years from now, your educational experience will be much richer and I think much more effective.
Yeah. Well, let's hope so, but I think we're on the right track. As long as kids are learning, that's a good thing, right? So, gentlemen, thank you to you both for being here. It was a great conversation.
Yeah, great. Glad to be here.
All right. Okay, we'll be right back with this week's Full Frame Close-Up. You stay right there.